We have discussed in detail how password attacks can be performed by means of technical devices, password cracker, guessing, keylogger and others. Now we want to have a look on identity theft by social engineering. What is social engineering? Social engineering, the idea is to exploit human weaknesses to provoke certain reactions. For example, using false, for example, stolen identity to exploit the human weakness of a victim. For example, to use the address of your ill friend or some person you know quite well. The idea is to develop a trust relation or to develop a fear relation, a respect relation, to misuse the human willingness to help or other things, and to perform by means of this emotion to force the user by this emotion to do some action which is helpful for the attacker to attack the system of the user. So the victims are convinced into doing something they would not do under normal circumstances. For example, if a person came and called you and say your computer is wrong, there is some mistake, and is able to establish a trust relation, and then ask the victim to repair your computer, to install something new, to change the configuration, tell me simply your password, and then can I do for you. So the victim is convinced into doing something, into giving the attacker the password, and then the attacker has it. So issuing information like the password, like other identity data, or granting access to protecting systems, to protecting places and resources. The most common method that is based on this social engineering approach in the internet is phishing. Phishing, it's an artificial word coming from phishing and the P from password. Phishing. This is a malicious method to obtain sensitive information. A typical procedure is the dispatch from fraudulent emails. For example, send an email from a trustworthy sender's address. For example, an email from your bank, an email from a company or another authority. And then the sender's address is selected specifically with regards to the information to be collected. For example, the bank as the sender of the address is selected if the attacker wants to get access to the account, to the bank account of the user. The email addresses, to work with falsified email addresses quite easily in internet. It's so-called email spoofing. There is some default in the internet protocols, so the sender address of an email is not checked. So for an attacker, it's easy to work with faked address. The confidence that's gained by the alleged sender is then abused to cause some action desired by the attacker. For example, publication of data. For example, a login to the bank account. And in this way, then the attacker gets access to the data, to the login data, or to let the victim install some software, some malicious software, which makes it possible for the attacker later to access his systems. So for example, we have our victim, as our victim gets from the attacker server an email, for example, that looks like that it was sent from his home bank, and then the user follows gives the credentials to a web page that looks like the web page of his online bank, but you see here it's not bank, here's hank.de, so it is an it is a falsified web page. So the user has the impression that he logs in his bank with his online bank. Online bank is here, but he does this with this manipulated website, and then the data, the login data, are automatically sent to the attackers, and perhaps forwarded also to the bank, to the real server of the bank, so that the user is not aware that the attacker in this way has phished his data. So the email is sent with a falsified address. The victim clicks the link that's sent to him in the email. This link leads to a faked to a malicious website. It looks like it leads to the real bank, but in reality it links to this attacker's web page that really looks very, very similar to the web page of the bank, and then the data are forwarded to the attacker. The email sent from falsified senders. Real danger, because one does not look so carefully. One thinks, okay, this is my bank, and then one do some actions that typically is affected. It is requested from the bank, or this is from a family member or others. There is a chance to realize that the attacker work with faked addresses. So here is an example, a message that apparently came from PayPal. But here, if you look very careful, it's not PayPal, it's Paypla.com. And this is the web page of the attacker. And it looks very much similar to the PayPal page. So the user is not realizing that he or she is on a faked page. But one has a chance to identify it if one has a closer look to the sender. There are more things that can be detected. There are sometimes some small mistakes. So the page is not really identical to the PayPal page. And if one detects such differences, one can get a feeling whether it's a fake page or whether it's the original one. So to prompt the recipient to reveal account data, which helps then the attacker, for example, to log in and do some action on the real PayPal account of the user. So phishing often recognized by small linguistic errors or missing personal address. So, for example, hello customer. Typically, the bank page welcomes you with your name. But in a hurry, one is not aware of this. So this is our signs that this is not the real web page, this is a faked web page of the attacker. Here is so if one gets this mail and if one has a feeling that the email, that the link links to the web page with a prompter for the account details, so it looks very much like the PayPal page, and here you see the user gives in all the secret information. So a careless victim then gives all this information, and then this information is sent to the attacker, and the attacker has it in its hand. So social engineering, phishing attacks are widespread. The conventional phishing attacks are now relatively easy to spot. For example, I mentioned this already, by the small spelling errors, or by speaking to you as a customer and not by your name. This typically phishing mails are distributed very widely and very unspecially, so that there are many receivers getting this mail, and from that many, it is enough if only a few answer and send the information. So with many millions of such potential victims, already a very low conversion rate is sufficient to achieve significant success, to get access at least of a few people with, for example, the bank account information. Problems for the attackers are that during the last time the media sensitized internet users and explains them how phishing is working, and there are many information that one should look very careful to sender address, to small spelling errors and others. So they draw attention to the common phishing networks. The phishing emails reach many recipients to whom the context does not fit. For example, there is sent a phishing mail with asking you to log into your bank account, but it comes from a wrong bank house. It's not your personal one, it's another bank house. So this is because these phishing mails are sent to millions of people, and the attacker did not a lot of effort to exactly find the information about that receiver of the sender. Here, this example I mentioned, sender is a bank where the victim has no account. So in last time, personalized phishing became more and more important and dangerous. So the traditional widespread phishing is no longer appropriate for guaranteed information retrieval and to obtain the sensitive information. Therefore, the attacker take more time, the so-called spear phishing, to take more time to send personalized phishing mails. So they start in the beginning, they start to analyze social media to collect highly detailed information about their victim in order to gain their trust. So they do not make mistakes, they find out which bank is used by this particular user so that they exactly send the website of that bank. Or they find out what is the family relation where the receiver can be brought to some action that are useful for the attacker. So the reference to persons, for example, friend, family member, colleagues, whom the victim knows and trusts, and this can be found by analyzing the social media. Or the victim believes that email comes from this trusted person, so then it's no more so careful and follows the requested activities. So the spear phishing attacks became very successful. So they are more work for the attacker, is much more individualized. The attacker has to analyze, has to spy out the person, has to find out many details about the person. But then with this very personalized phishing emails, the user often follow what the attacker wants to do them. So personalized phishing is in this way very dangerous. And of course, because it's such a lot of work, it targets to high-ranked persons, for example, CEOs, politicians, high-ranked officials, celebrities, and others. And they are sent to persons in very sensitive sectors, for example, military, business, politics, financial, or professional attackers, for example, state activists, organized crime, or others. There are many other attacks on the internet which start with such type of personalized phishing. This makes it really very dangerous, and one needs to be very careful. There are more techniques for social engineering. For example, so-called baiting. This is exploiting the curiosity, the greed of victims, distributing gifts. I send you a gift, and to get full access, you have to register here. Of course, then the gifts came with malicious secondary functions, for example, USB sticks, which were given as a present, which contain malicious software, which contain malicious app. Pretexting is another social engineering technique that's quite successful. This is a fabrication of stories, fabrication of lies, of fake news, to induce a publication of victims' information or particular reactions. For example, asking for help for disaster victims or other touching stories, empathic to appel against empathic of a person by posing as a charity organization. So-called reverse social engineering. Here one speaks from reverse social engineering if an attacker contacts a victim who is seeking help and offers this help in order to gain his or her trust, and later on then misuse his systems or his accounts. To give some example from the past which became public, then you see it start very early. Already in 1980, Kevin Mitnick was a famous computer criminal, famous hacker. He began his social engineering attacks at the age of 15. And then later on perfected the method. He was often arrested for several famous attacks, hacking attacks. For example, he obtained access to dozens of computer networks, and so he were one of the most wanted cyber criminals in the US. To come to our days, 2010, there was a famous attack against Google. Google employees were attacked by personalized phishing. So the idea was now individual people inside Google were the addressee of such personalized phishing mails, and the phishing emails contained links to malicious software, and the Google employees were brought to follow these links, and later on follow these links, the malicious software were installed, and later on the attackers could access email accounts, for example from Chinese activists, and can see who is behind. There is another famous security incident which was based on social engineering. This was the RSA security attack from 2011. Also here, RSA, a very famous security company in the internet, and also here employees received emails attached with an Excel personal plan. And this plan contained a worm, a flash worm, which later on attacked the RSA network. And in the result, there were a theft of information from RSA security idea. This is a token, security token, distributed very much. And this information from that RSA secure ID later on was enabled the attackers, for example, to step in and attack the arms manufacturer Stratfor. 2012 Matonen case. This was discussed very much in the social media. Matonen is the author in the tech magazine Wired. And the complete undercutting of the digital identity of Honan, so social engineering attacked from service employees at Apple and Amazon. So there is an interesting story, and when he found out that he was attacked, Matt Honan published this. So in the attack target was Honan's Twitter account, which were attacked and from which malicious and fake information was sent. Another method for social engineering are precautions. This is the sensation of users and employment to safety awareness. So to help to make the people more clear what are the dangers in the internet. So particularly in the context of social engineering, this precaution is very important, and to raise the safety awareness. This is, by the way, also a goal, an important goal of our OpenHPI course. We do it by education. It's also possible by performing occasional phishing tests and see whether the employees follow this recommendation in this phishing mails, and then to explain, be more careful to these employees or to these peoples. The verification of the identity of the alleged correspondent is important. For example, is there a doubt, then ask for getting a proof that this person is really the person you trust. Secure authentication is very important. For example, by means of trustworthy certificates, so that it's really clear if a person has access to the system that it's really that person. The responsibility handling of personal data and information is an important point and a precaution here. What is given to the outside world? What is published on the website? What is given into Google? What is published in Facebook? The more information you give, the more detailed information you give, the more easy is it for the attacker, for example, for such a spear phishing, to find relevant information, relevant contacts in your social media, in your published social media. Precaution against phishing, if we look particularly to that point, read email very careful. Look for typing errors. Look whether it's the right logo of the company. Look for authorized names. Check the address of the email. Not always is the name that's displayed by your email address the real address. It's possible to have a closer look to see this address. So if sensitive information is requested, account access, password, then requests the confirmation of a service provider whether it's really necessary. Then this is a very important hint. We will see also in other contexts. You should not follow a link, but visit the service mentioned in the email by yourself. So go via Google, for example, to look whether it's true. If you follow the link, there's a chance that you end up on a web page of the attackers and give them your data. So these are a few precautions against phishing, against social engineering. Beside of technical attacks, the human is a weak point, and attackers try to address this weak point by social engineering methods to get some sensitive information, to steal some identity data of a user.